actually talk about the Alabama-Kentucky game and what to expect. So Kentucky this season is playing a little bit different style than they have played under Calipari in the past. Calipari has been criticized by Kentucky fans for the past few years of running a pretty archaic offense and not letting his athletes, he's long recruited some of the best athletes in the country, but he's slowed them down to a style that was, un-Nate Oates-esque. There's been a lot of Kentucky fans calling for wanting Nate Oates or, just other things where it was a standpoint of he's not letting his athletes be athletes. This season, he's doing more of that. He is allowing, his guys to run in transition. Kentucky runs a much faster style. They definitely shoot more threes. They're more efficient this year than they have been in years past. And so the offense is definitely taking a step forward. However, the defense is not as good. Sounds similar to Alabama this year. They're a team that's, again, very similar to Alabama and Florida, where the offense is near elite and the defense is not great. Now, similar to Alabama and Florida, their defense is getting better. So Kentucky currently sits, looking here, at 9th in offensive efficiency and 77th in defensive efficiency. Currently, Alabama is 1st and 73rd for those at home, keeping track. So that is something just to keep in mind. The one place that Kentucky is definitely elite is three-point shooting. They are currently number 1 in the country, shooting over 40% from three. They have 3 guys that are elite three-point shooters, as well as the number 2 three-point shooter in the entire country, and Reed Sheppard. Reed Sheppard has just been elite all season from behind the arc. Also, Dillingham and Reeves have both been super efficient behind the arc, just really, really good shooters and at pretty high volumes as well. The place where I think this Alabama-Kentucky game is going to come down to is a couple of spots. One of them is going to be turnovers. In Alabama's 2 road losses earlier this year in the SEC, they lost to Auburn and to Tennessee. In those 2 games, they had 15 turnovers at Auburn and 22 turnovers at Tennessee. That's been a real issue for Alabama. This Kentucky team has some guys, including Reed Sheppard, which I mentioned, that is really elite at causing turnovers. Shepherd's top 10 in the country in forcing steals. And, Kentucky has the ability to turn you over and to cause some havoc on the defensive end, as well as block shots. They're 3rd in the country in block shots. They have 3 7-foot guys, that play variety of minutes. Big Z plays the least amount out of those guys. They have 3 guys that play, a variety of minutes, and they're all really good shot blockers. So that's something that Alabama is going to have to keep in mind, that Alabama has had issues with in years past and a little this year, where, with our style of driving to the rim, they do have a tendency to get their shots blocked. So that is a spot where I think Kentucky's defense has the ability to wreak some havoc. But whether the block shots happen or not, one place that I think that Kentucky is going to have a little bit of an advantage is the ability to potentially force steals. So that's going to be something that Alabama definitely has to watch out on, because if they allow Reed Sheppard or Dillingham or any of these guys to force steals and then get running in transition, that's going to spell bad news for Alabama. At the end of the day, you're playing in an opponent's arena. You're playing in Rupp Arena, which historically, one of the toughest places to play in the entire country for a long time. Rupp has been a place that nobody goes in and wins. However, this year they have had, some struggles in Rupp. They had 3 games in a row earlier this year that they lost, the first time since the 60s. So this isn't the Kentucky of old in Rupp Arena. However, it's still Rupp Arena. It's still Kentucky. This is not going to be an easy game to go in and win. However, Alabama definitely has the ability. One of the spots that I think Alabama will have the advantage, especially if Trey Mitchell doesn't play, is actually rebounding. I think that playing A&M and Florida just before this game is going to have prepared Alabama for how to rebound and how to rebound against teams that have guys bigger than them. I mentioned Kentucky having 3 guys over 7 foot. Kentucky, especially if Trey Mitchell plays, you're going to have multiple guys over that 6'10", 6'11" range on the court at the same time. And Alabama has played a few games, Florida included, where they had multiple guys in that range and have shown their ability to rebound. So I think this A&M and then Florida game immediately leading up to the Kentucky game, I think is huge because it gives Alabama the ability to call back on this is what we did, this is how we had success, similar to that Georgia game, right? Nate Oates talks about the Georgia game being able to be called back on in that Florida game. I look at it the same way. Going against Georgia and getting out rebounded on the road, and then playing A&M and having them out rebound you. You can call on those things about what went wrong in the Florida game, and then against Kentucky, Kentucky's not as good of an elite rebounding team. Looking here, they're 180th in offensive rebounding and 242nd in defensive rebounding. So they're not top of the country in rebounding. That's a spot that Alabama can definitely have some success. On the other front, I think another place that Alabama can definitely have some success is the same stat that I looked at in saying I thought we were going to shoot a lot of threes against A&M, but we weren't going to shoot a lot of threes against Florida. We ended up getting up to 32 when it got to overtime, but overall we had more success in the paint against Florida. That stat is how many three-point attempts compared to field goal attempts the opposing team allows. Florida was elite at that stat. They ran you off the three-point line, and they also didn't give up a lot of assisted field goals. Kentucky is much more like LSU or A&M is in that stat. They give up about 41% of the opponent's shots to be from three-point range, and they allow about 54% of the shots to be assisted. That fully fits into Alabama's game plan. Alabama's game plan in a game is to have Sears and Estrada run and facilitate the offense and kick out to open shooters, whether that be Reitzel, whether that be Sears, whether that be Griffin, Stevenson, the list goes on. But that is Alabama's game plan. The game plan is to have your guards run the offense and kick out to open shooters or, drive to the hole and get the layup. So with that being part of the game plan, I think that Kentucky's style of how they play defense, not running teams off the line, and allowing assists on those buckets, I think that plays into how Alabama likes to play. And I actually do think Alabama has the ability to come out with this win. I would definitely be a little bit more positive about the odds of us winning if Reitzel plays. I think that gives you another shooter that Kentucky has to account for. With Kentucky having the guards that they have and the elite guard and wing play that they have, I think having Reitzel on the court for this game would be massive. However, I do think that they have the ability to win even without him. You just played a team in Florida that had three guards that had really, really good games. So they have played teams that have, elite guard play, and they just showed in the last game that they can win without Reitzel. However, I do think that in this game, you're going to need to make some more threes than you did in the last one. 25% was Alabama's lowest of the season, especially at home. But, overall, one of the worst of the season. And, I think having Reitzel in this next game would be massive. So I do think Alabama has a good chance at winning the game. I will put out my official prediction in the pregame thread that will be coming out, probably immediately following the podcast. So stay in touch either on Twitter or on Substack if you're curious in the full write-up, about the game, breaking down each player, as well as some videos and the official prediction. So stay in touch for that. It'll be coming out on Substack and on Twitter.